Good evening, everybody. I'm Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and this is our ESA town hall. Let's see, let me get to the proper slide here. Okay, here we go. So the idea is that um, Texas is creating education savings accounts for the first time. So this is the first, universal private school choice program in Texas, and we want to be your trusted source for information about education. And so we're creating these programs to present information about education savings accounts. This one tonight is virtual, but we also have events that are in person. So our next in-person event um, is, okay, sorry guys, let me check my notes here. All right, our next in-person event, July 31st. It's going to be at the Discovery School. But we're really glad that you're here with us tonight so we can talk about this virtually. So I want to welcome you all to leave comments. If you have questions about education savings accounts, put your question in a comment, and my team is watching and they're going to help me see what's in the comments, and I can address them during the presentation. I'm also going to keep some time at the end of the presentation to catch up on any questions that I didn't address earlier. So okay, so let's dive in. Also, we want to keep in touch with the folks who are watching. So if you can grab your phone and scan this QR code, it'll take you to a quick form. And that way, I miss the in-person interaction of our live town halls, like the one we had at St. Mary Magdalene last month. So, this is the closest we can get is y'all using the QR code, fill out the form, and keep in touch with us that way. So, okay, so I'm going to go into some basics. So what is an ESA? So ESA stands for Education Savings Account. And the main idea is that it's the state of Texas providing money to fund private education expenses. And that's different than any program that we've had before. So, right. So up until now, we've had traditional public schools, right, through independent school districts that serve neighborhood schools. And we've had public charter schools for over 25 years, right? But this is a new idea in Texas. It's been around in other states for decades, but it was passed in the legislature in the spring, and we're going to start getting more details soon about how it's going to roll out. Okay, so the education savings accounts are funded by the state of Texas, so it's coming out of tax dollars that are allocated for education. So we're going to go into more detail about what it covers, but the highlight is that it covers things like tuition, but also things like therapy, tutoring. It can cover technology, and there's a bunch of other categories, but it's all stuff that's education related. So the legislature allocated $1 billion for the first 2 years of the program, which is a lot of money, but there's also a lot of kids in Texas. So, hopefully a lot of kids can access this, but it's definitely not going to be every student in Texas. And it's a lot of new information to process. And so far we have access to the ESA bill, and we've gone over that in a lot of detail in our studying, but we don't have the regulations, we don't have the official website or things like that. But we're still excited about it. We want you to keep checking back with us for updates. And what we're most excited about is the fact that it's going to expand the range of education options that kids can have, right? So we've been talking about, traditional public schools, magnet schools, public charter schools, homeschooling, but this means that students will be able to have more access to private education because the education savings account makes it more affordable. So, okay, so that's our high level view. Let me check with my team. Do we have any comments yet? Okay, no comments. All right, so we're going to go into more detail about particular aspects of education savings accounts. Okay, so you might be wondering, when is this program going to start, right? So it passed and was signed during the spring. And we're going to get more information soon about the timeline. We don't know yet. So, but what it sounds like is that there's going to be one academic year for an application process, and then it would be not this fall, but the year after in 2026 that students would start using ESA funds to pay for their private school tuition or other education expenses. So basically, be on your toes during this upcoming enrollment season to apply for the ESA, right? To apply for private school or make your plan for homeschooling or whatever that is. um, but you wouldn't be able to access the funds until next fall. So that's what we know so far about the timeline. Okay, so you might be wondering, is my child going to be eligible for this? And the answer is most kids are eligible. So there is a requirement that the students be a US citizen or a legal resident. So the bill says, the statute says, the child has to be eligible to attend Texas public schools. Um, so it should be, it's meant to be universal, right? It's meant to be as broad as possible. Um, some tips to be prepared, because like I said, we don't know the timeline yet, but you definitely want to take advantage of that um, time of application before the deadline closes. The other thing is you want to have some documents handy to prove residency, just like you would if you were going to your neighborhood public school or a public charter school. They might want to see a utility bill or birth certificate or things like that. Just some basic documents. You'll want to have those ready because that will be part of the application process for the ESA. Okay, let me check my questions. Oh yeah, so I am not a Spanish speaker, but we have Spanish speakers on our team who are ready to answer your questions. So if you have questions about ESAs and you want to type it in Spanish, that's your comfort zone. We're here to help. Okay, let me check the next. Okay, so if you're joining us a little bit late, we want to keep in touch. So if you can scan the QR code on the screen and just fill out that form, that'll give us your contact information, and we can keep you updated about any developments about education savings accounts. Because like I said, we don't know the exact timeline yet. There's going to be more details coming out, but we're going to keep studying that and keep sharing that information. Okay, so I said earlier that it's meant to be a very broad program, right? That pretty much all kids are eligible for this. But if there's only $1 billion allocated for the first 2 years, that's not enough to cover every student. So how is the money going to be divided up? So the bill specifies certain priority groups, right? So one thing they did that I think is really smart is they give siblings priority, right? So if one child in the family gets an ESA, that means all the siblings get it. And that's great because you don't want to have to be driving to more than one campus unless you absolutely have to. Um, so siblings get priority. That's great. That's a good move. Um, the system is designed so that the highest priority group for ESAs are the kids who have a diagnosed disability and they're either from a low income family or a middle income family. So and those are defined as being at in relation to the federal poverty level, right? So basically, if the household income is $160,000 a year or less, and the child has a disability, they're in this highest priority category for education savings accounts. Okay, so the next um, level of priority is low income students, and then the next after that is middle income students. So again, that's using the roughly $160,000 a year family income, and that's going to change year to year based on inflation and changes to the federal poverty level. But that's what we're looking at right now. So the statute defines that no more than 20% of the resources in the program can go to families earning $160,000 a year income or more, right? So the idea is that maybe currently in private school, it's a lot of, and maybe more wealthier families that have access to private school tuition. And if the money just goes to those families, it's not fulfilling the mission of increasing access to private schools for families who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. So that's why the statute, for at least for the next 2 years, has a cap that no more than 20% of the funds in the program could go to households that earn more than $160,000 a year. So, okay, so that's who's eligible, or that's how priority is given, right? So the group with the highest priority is the low and middle income families, and there's a child with a diagnosed disability. Okay, so I'm gonna change up the screen a little bit so y'all can see the whole slide. Um, Okay, so what can you use ESA funds to pay for? I think the part that, based on media coverage, that people are most familiar with is the idea that you can pay private school tuition with ESA funds, right? Like we've seen events where elected officials have gone to private schools and held rallies, and it's going to be great for those private schools to be able to open their doors to a wider set of students who could tap into ESA funds and use that to pay tuition. So, and it's not just tuition; it's also things like if there's a breakfast and lunch program at the private school, if there's tuition costs or uniforms, books, things like that, those can be covered by the ESA as well. So, but it's not just the private school tuition. There's other types of expenses that ESA funds can be used to cover. So if a student is getting some kind of therapy, whether it's like reading intervention, if it's um, speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavior analysis, those types of therapies can be funded by ESAs. Also, things like tutoring, right? Um, then there's different types of technology that you can use ESA funds for. Transportation costs, if it's like a fee for service transportation, that's covered. There's online courses, credential programs like higher education providers, and then also childcare, right? There's a provision for pre-K. So it's a broader set of expenses than people might expect. Um, so it's not just limited to tuition at private schools, right? It's sort of related expenses at private schools or these other types of expenses like the therapies, the tutoring, the equipment. It just all has to be education related, and we're probably going to see more regulations on top of just what it says in the statute, just to make sure that the money goes to good purposes, right? And there's auditing provisions. There's also provisions doing background checks on, right, like who are these teachers or tutors or providers, just to make sure that these are safe people to be with children, that these people are well qualified. Okay, so that's what ESA funds can cover. Um, then you might be wondering how much money can a family access, right? So this slide is a summary, and we're probably going to learn more information over time, but just at a high level, there's kind of three main categories. One is it's a uh, typical student, right, no disabilities, going to an accredited private school, and we're estimating that it's approximately $10,000 per year per pupil. That number is set at 85% of what the state is contributing to the cost of education. So there's going to be some back and forth between TEA and the comptroller about that data. So we don't know what the actual number is, but we're estimating that it's roughly $10,000 per year. And the good news is that there are a lot of private schools in the San Antonio area that charge $10,000 or less for tuition. So that's good news. If you choose to enroll your child at a school that costs more than that, then the family can use their resources to make up the difference, right? So maybe you have a 529 plan you can tap into. Maybe you can get gifts from relatives, things like that, a scholarship. So it doesn't prevent you from picking a private school that's more expensive. It just means that it's the family's responsibility to make up the difference in the cost. Okay, so that's the basic category, is a typical student, no disabilities, and they are enrolling at an accredited private school. So next category is, what if that student is going to an accredited private school, but they also have a diagnosed disability? So the statute provides that up to $30,000 a year can go to that student, but it depends on what it says in the child's IEP. So that's the individualized education plan. So those of us with kids in special education are familiar with that. It talks about what's the child's diagnosis, what services are they getting at school. So there's probably going to be some kind of coding process that looks at the IEP and estimates, what's the additional cost to educate that child. Now, so you might be wondering, like, okay, what if it's a family that is planning to go to private school? They haven't had their child evaluated. That private school doesn't do special education evaluations. There's a system in the statute where the family can go to the school district that they're zoned for and request an evaluation that way. The only downside with this is it does take some lead time to get that evaluation, get that diagnosis. But it's important for families to know that they have that option. And that, I guess that's another tip besides, like have your documentation ready. You can already start the process of requesting that evaluation from your local school district. You don't have to wait to find out more about the timeline for the ESAs. And if your child is diagnosed and you're that lower or middle income family, then that puts you in the highest priority group to access ESAs. And it also means, depending on what it says in your child's IEP, that your child may be entitled to more than $10,000 per year with a cap of 30,000. Okay, so that's the second category, right? Is students with disabilities. Now, there's one more category, and that's homeschool students, right? So, and a homeschool is basically a non-accredited private school, right? So, and it provides up to $2,000 a year for homeschool families, and it means that there's no hoops to jump through. There's no testing requirements. There's none of the other um, things that accredited private schools would have to prove. So this is kind of a safety valve, right? It means that those homeschool families will have more resources, but they don't have to jump through the hoops of accreditation. Okay, so that's the answer to the how much money question. It does depend on certain factors, but there's those three main groups. Okay, so this question or this slide is a little bit of a placeholder. We're kind of waiting for more information from the comptroller's office before we can really fill it in with specific dates. So like I said before, we're expecting there will be kind of a 1-year application process. And then the year after that, 2026-27, is when students would actually be able to tap into ESA funds to pay for tuition or pay for tutoring or therapy, things like that. Now, the application is it's going to be free. It's going to be online. There's going to be a portal where you'll be able to access and manage your account. You'll be able to find a list of providers and vendors and direct that money be sent to those providers and vendors. So the families are not going to handle any of the money themselves. The money will go to the school that they select through the portal. So we're excited to learn more about how this is going to work. We don't have the details yet about that, but we definitely want you to keep in touch with us, and we will keep updating you. So that's perfect timing for the QR code. So if you can scan this with your phone, fill out the form real quick, we'll be able to keep in touch with you. Oh yeah, and then our team has just dropped the link in the comments. So that's another way to access it. If using the QR code is not handy, just drop down to the comments and you can click on the form there. But we want to keep in touch, and as we learn more about education savings accounts in Texas, we want to share that with you. Okay, so folks are wondering, I mentioned this a little bit related to, is it an accredited private school and what are the requirements for that? So the statute explains more what hoops a school has to jump through, right? Because we don't want fraud. We want kids going to a private school that's a high quality private school. So this the ESA program does require testing, but it's not the STAR test, right? Okay, so if your kids continue to go to a traditional public school or a public charter school, they will have to continue to take the STAR test starting in 3rd grade. But if you choose a private school, and it's a school that takes ESAs, and um, then that school will have to administer some kind of test. It doesn't have to be the STAR. It just has to be like a nationally approved test. So the idea is to have some kind of accountability that the private school really is helping kids grow, is helping them learn that there'll be data to show, is this program working? Um, so I know in an ideal world, maybe you would have no testing. Well, that's what the homeschool option is for, right? The $2,000 a year, and then you don't have the testing requirements, you don't have the accreditation requirements. Um, so one question that's come up is people are wondering, like, okay, if my child is going to their charter school or they're going to the neighborhood public school, could they access the ESA money for the therapy or the tutoring or the certification exams or things like that? The answer is, if your child is counted in the attendance at a public school, right, whether it's a ISD or a charter, then no, you can't access the ESA money. And that's a bright line rule. So if your child is counted in the attendance at that charter school, it means that that charter school or that public school is getting funds from the state to educate your child, and they're supposed to cover what they're supposed to cover, right? So that includes, um, the special education and things like that. Now, if your child is going to a private school or homeschool, right? So if you're in the ESA system, there may be things you can access at a public school, right? So like a public school or a charter school may offer like an advanced math class or an advanced science class, or some, or tutoring services or dyslexia services or things like that. So there may be sort of a la carte options that you can get from a public school as a vendor, um, but that wouldn't make your child count towards the attendance at that public school. So a little bit complicated. It'd be interesting to see how this plays out. Um, it creates opportunities for the traditional public schools and the public charter schools to be vendors and providers in the ESA space. So um, interesting to see how this will play out. Okay, so if your child is going into kindergarten or anywhere up to 12th grade, um, then the ESA program is open to all the kids in pre-K, in K through 12. Now, if your child is in pre-K, there are eligibility requirements, and so I have that up on another tab. So I'm going to drop that in the comments. Um, this is a question that comes up a lot. So Texas does not have universal pre-K. It's limited to certain categories, right? So if it like income requirements or um, homelessness, foster care, things like that. Um, so the ESA is available for pre-K, but only if the child meets the criteria that they would be eligible for public pre-K. Okay, so I have gone through my basic material. Um, let's see, I'm taking the. Okay, it looks like the team has been handling the questions as they come through. So I want to thank the team for that. Um, Okay, for one more opportunity, I want to ask folks, please scan the QR code, and we will keep you updating you as we find out more information about how education savings accounts are going to work in Texas. So this is a work in progress. If the QR code is not working, the link is in the comments. Um, and we have more events coming up. So we have in-person events. Um, and let's see, I can drop that link in the comment as well. So we have one coming up on July 31st and also again on August 21st. So let me drop that in the comments. Okay, yes, more events. And if you register for one of the events, also that will get you on the mailing list to get more updates about what's happening with ESAs. Um, Okay, so let me give kind of a recap some of the things we've been talking about. So, okay, so education savings accounts are a new program in Texas, and we're in the next academic year. There's going to be an application process, and then by 2026-27, students will actually be able to go to private school using money from the state of Texas, and that is a huge change in Texas. We've never had that before. And what I'm excited about that is it just widens the range of options. So if you're a family doing a search um, and you're concerned about affordability, you're not just limited to your neighborhood public school or the charter schools in the area, but you can also look at private schools and using ESA money to make the cost of tuition affordable for your family. So there is going to be a limited number of spots, and we want to make sure that the people in our audience know what the process is going to be, know what those dates are. We don't have that information yet, but we just want to tell you what you need to know to be ready. Have those documents ready so you can prove residency and you can apply. Please keep in touch. We're going to keep sharing information. Um, we have, let's see, I want to make sure that you can access our resources. Our website is sachartermoms.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. Our Facebook group is huge. We're over 15,000 members, and it's a great place to ask questions, and the other members will chime in and help you out. So we're sharing about ESAs in that group as well. Okay, so let me switch this around. Y'all can see me better. Okay. Okay. So okay, so I've covered the material that I meant to cover. And let's see. Oh yeah, there's the Facebook group link. Um yeah, okay. And I don't see any other questions or comments. But I want to thank you for your attention and for coming along with us on this journey. And because what we care about is getting the information out to families so that they can know what's going on, take action on it, and do what's right for their kids. And I think education savings accounts have the potential to open a lot of doors for kids in San Antonio. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you at one of our in-person events or maybe an upcoming virtual event. Okay, thanks, y'all.